And we are live. All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with Bob Rose. How you doing tonight, Bob? You're not quite as tan as you were last week. It's already fading.
Yeah, the tan is fading, as is my mood. The closer we get to fall, and the farther away we get from summer. I'll have football to latch onto, obviously, for a few months. So hopefully the Saints can salvage my mood at least a little bit on a weekly basis. We shall see.
Well, I look forward to fall because I'm tired of 90-degree temperatures and 100% humidity. So, I don't have to deal with the snow and everything else that you have to deal with. But I look forward to some cooler temperatures, gumbo weather. That's football for me. That's still another 3 months away, though. That's late October before we start getting the first significant cool fronts. All right, so Saints played their first preseason game. As usual, people kind of, and that's why this episode is titled Reaction to Action. People see a preseason game and they just start drawing all kinds of conclusions like we need to cut Penning. We need to play. Go ahead and put Spencer Rattler as quarterback one. A.T. Perry is actually doing very well. We don't know what they were talking about in training camp. All these reactions, and as Buddy D used to say, preseason is an illusion. I sound like Bernie Sanders, but I mean, that's pretty much how he talked. We're not as good as we look on some things. We're not as bad as we look on some things. And Mike Detillier said it best. It usually takes 3 or 4 weeks into the season before you really start to see how the league start to shake itself out and who a team really is. Last year we started 2-0, on our way to 3-0, and then the collapse against the Packers not long after Carr was knocked out of the game. And the Saints, I think, lost the following week. So they ended up being 2-2. Then they started to slide. And that was one of the things that Dennis Allen talked about, was he wasn't as interested starting hot as it was the middle of that season to get a win streak going. Stop doing this whole, we'll start really good and then start sulking or start losing in October, November. So based on what you saw Saturday night, what are some of the good things that you saw that you think will carry over into the regular season?
You got to start with the defense, and both you and I knew this, Alan, that this was going to be a team that lived or died on the defensive side of the ball. Now, let's throw the caveat out there that the Arizona Cardinals are not going to be a good football team, not by any stretch of the imagination. And they didn't have Kyler Murray. But the Saints didn't have Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, Demario Davis, Pete Werner, or Cam Jordan. And this defense still looked like world beaters. Now, I'm not going to jump on the championship level unit train quite yet, but I do believe that this defense has that kind of potential. You said before we went on the air that the Cardinals didn't even have a first down until a few minutes left in the first half. The New Orleans Saints dominated the line of scrimmage. I use the defense as a positive sign in general, but specifically, I thought Willie Gay was the player of the game on both sides of the ball. And the New Orleans defensive line caused more disruption than what we saw for the most part at any point last season. Chase Young had a hell of a game, but Brian Brissy made plays. Carl Granderson made plays. Mr. August Peyton Turner made plays. Yeah, you hope in Peyton's case that carries over into the regular season, that he doesn't trip on a pebble or something, and miss 10 to 12 weeks. But yeah, definitely good signs from this unit. And again, without Lattimore, Adebo, Warner, Davis, and Jordan in, this defense gets a whole hell of a lot better once those guys are on the field.
I thought Kool-Aid McKinstry had a good game.
Yes.
For his first game, I thought he showed a lot of the skills that we were hoping to see from a guy who should have been a first-round pick, ended up going in the second round. Alontae Taylor had some good stuff going on, so that was good as well. I mean, there were a lot of things in it that I really enjoyed watching. And yeah, Willie Gay and Chase Young, those guys are serious. Those guys are really good. You can see. I was impressed that Chase Young was showing some leadership out there.
Yeah.
You watch him on the sideline. He's talking to guys. He's directing things. He's standing out there. He's not cutting up on the sideline. He was into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing, because I think he is playing, obviously, for a big contract, long-term contract. He wants to put aside the whole story about, he takes plays off, that he's injury prone, all those negatives about him. And I'm really excited about it. I really am, because I liked what I saw out of those two guys. This defense looks faster than last year. Now, obviously, when the bullets fly for real and you start getting a more mobile quarterback than Desmond Ridder, a better quarterback than Desmond Ridder. I mean, because Ridder must have been thinking, I just dealt with this shit in Atlanta, and I'm over here getting the hell kicked out of me by the same guys. But, yeah, I mean, once these guys kind of gel and start figuring out what they do best and communicating better, I think this defense is going to be one of the best defenses the team has ever had, especially if you've got the back end staying healthy. And I'm talking about Lattimore and Adebo. If that back end can stay healthy, I think the front seven with DeMario, with Gay, with Chase Young, with Brzee, with Nathan Shepard, I thought he had a good game.
Yes.
I think that helps Granderson out a lot too, to make Granderson more effective. I think Cam did play a little bit, because they did do a couple of NASCAR packages where they put 4 defensive ends in there, and that created some havoc too. But I think, this team is showing the speed and the power that we wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
Question is, can they do it for multiple games? Can they stay together for multiple weeks? Can the offense get enough going that those guys don't get tired?
Mm-hmm.
They start handling the mobile quarterbacks to shut the run down, playing to their strengths. I mean, those are the kind of things we have to see, and we won't see that until the season starts.
No, you're right, because the concerns that I had defensively were, and you said it before we went on the air, the Cardinals' touchdown drives were really a product of missed tackles and blown assignments by the Saints. Third and fourth team, a lot of guys that aren't going to make the team or just going to be practice squad players. Once Gay was out of the lineup, you saw the same Dennis Allen defense that has always had trouble against mobile quarterbacks. Ridder ran for some gains. Clayton Tune broke containment a couple of times where he shouldn't. But again, those were third and fourth teamers. When you still have to be nervous, because Cam Jordan's 35 years old. Demario Davis is 35 years old. Mm-hmm. Lattimore missed a lot of time in the last 2 seasons with injuries. So you're relying on those guys to stay healthy and at the top of their game. But even outside of the defensive line, through the linebacking core in the cornerback unit, and even at safety, although there is quite a drop off after Tyrann Mathieu, there's a lot of depth at those three positions. You and I are both still concerned about safety. We'll talk more about that in later segments. But the coaches anyway feel relatively secure in what they have at that position, in the way that a Jordan Howden, a Hugo Amadi, a Jonathan Abram, they aren't just special teamers. The coaches have confidence that they can plug and play these guys on the defensive side. Same with the linebackers. Anthony Orji, Monty Rice, I thought had a hell of a game on Saturday. DeMarco Jackson. There's more depth in this linebacking core than at any point that we've seen with the Saints, at least in a couple of decades.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was watching the special teams too, and I was looking to see who was out there, and it was, as I thought, a lot of linebackers, a lot of defensive backs, safeties and corners out there, because you're so close. If they break containment and get to the outside, you need to have guys who can run these kick returners down. So it's no longer defensive linemen, offensive linemen out there playing special teams. You're going to see on kickoffs, you're going to see a lot of defensive backs, and it's going to change the way I think they're going to cover punts too. I was impressed, and speaking of special teams, I was impressed with the punter. I thought he did a lot better getting hang time, flipping the fields. He was still kicking well into the corner and stuff, but he was really doing a good job keeping the Cardinals pinned early in the game when he was.
You talking Headley, right? Not Hager.
Yeah, Headley. Yes,
okay.
Headley. I just like what I saw out of him. The things we saw last year was more or less straight directional kicking, Australian rules, directional kicking. No hang time. It was going straight to the corner, and if he didn't get that corner, they had a chance to get a return on, but he basically was kicking to corners and not really getting distance on his kicks. I thought he got a lot better this year or what I saw so far, than what he did last year.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And the kick coverage units were pretty solid, both kickoff and punt. Something that the Saints have been pretty strong at in recent years. But that's something that can change so drastically with a team on a year-to-year basis because of so many roster changeovers at that back half. That's one thing that the New Orleans, say what you will about the quarterback play, the coaches, specific players and specific units. The Saints have been very, very strong, consistently strong at covering both kickoffs and punts, really in the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, it's really weird because, I got the 2009 America's game, Saints playing back here, where, it was all offense, and the special teams were okay, not great. The defense was okay, helped out a lot by Darren Sharper and the 9 touchdowns they scored defensively and all the turnovers, but it was primarily an offensive machine. That's how they were going to win games. They were going to win games that offense, putting points on the board. It's flipped. We now have a defensive team, and we're now a special teams kind of football team with a struggling offense that struggles to get things going.
It's a race to 20.
Yeah, very reminiscent of the Jim Moore teams and the Bum Phillips teams, from the standpoint of how this coach thinks to win games. And it's frustrating for people because they're used to seeing this.
Right.
They're used to seeing us put 45 points up on the board, and even if the other team is scoring, we're still going to win because we have Drew Brees, and we're going to find a way to outscore the other team. And it's just that's a great game. That's an exciting game. This way, it's very boring to watch, and people get very frustrated with that. So they're craving something to get them excited. And Derek Carr is not going to give that to you. Alvin Kamara hardly played. Rashid Shaheed wasn't even active for the game. I mean, they weren't really in an active list, but he was injured. I think I saw 2 catches by Olave, and then he was taken out of the game. So let's talk about the bad. And we're going to get into this in the second hemisphere because it's a huge concern. What was the bad? And let's focus on the offense because I know what we're going to talk about.
And we already threw out the bad about defensively about quarterback containment, and nobody really standing out at safety. The good on offense was A.T. Perry. I thought had a heck of a game. Really seems to be solidifying that number 3 receiving spot. Outside of the injury he got today, watch for that.
Yeah,
Talib Fuaga, I thought, had a very strong game. He stood out even further because the offensive line play was just so bad. I know everybody is on Trevor Penning's back, as well they should be, and I'm one of them. But I thought Lucas Patrick had some nice reps at left guard too. That was encouraging. But nobody else. Sincere Haynesworth, awful. Oli Udo, who I thought would be the 3rd tackle, awful.
Yes.
Landon Young, as we've come to expect from Landon Young, awful. And really anybody else on that offensive line outside of Fuaga was just horrible. But specifically, fans want to really get on Trevor Penning, and I get that. You're talking about a first round pick that they traded picks to help to move up and get along with Chris Olave that year. And not only, and I said this with Jordy Haltberg earlier this morning, it's not just that Penning is not developing at all. It's that he seems to be regressing. The only thing that he had going for him through his rookie year and last year's training camp was his power and his strength. Well, that's even been nullified because his technique and his footwork is just so bad that people are getting up into his pads, and just bull rushing him into the backfield. And this is a monstrous human being getting thrown around like a rag doll. It's one thing if the footwork and the technique are bad where you're helpless against speed rushers, and he has been. It's even worse when that technique is so bad that you're reaching and swiping on your run blocks, and he has been. But now bull rushers are throwing him around because his footwork is just so bad. He's getting stood straight up and pushed backwards. Derek Carr critics, want to point to the statistics. And Carr was just so bad, and Hainer was great, and Rattler are great. And I know we'll get into Jake and Spencer in a minute. 4 of Derek Carr's incompletions. And I watched this game. I watched the first half of this game 3 times, and I watched the game in its entirety twice. 4 of Derek Carr's incompletions were a direct result of having to get rid of the ball quicker than he wanted to on timing routes, 3 of those being sideline routes, because Penning or the right side of that line was just blown wide open, and rushers were getting to him. You're not going to be able to do anything offensively, folks. You can't establish a running game. You can't expect Carr, Rattler, Hainer, Montana, Elway, Mahomes. You can't expect anybody to be a decent quarterback behind Trevor Penning and most of the rest of this offensive line. So, in a nutshell, you can't. You have to give the running game an incomplete, or running backs an incomplete, the tight ends an incomplete, although I thought Halker had a few nice plays. And the receiving core an incomplete outside of A.T. Perry and the separation he got. You give all of them an incomplete because there was 0 blocking up front. That's your bad and you're ugly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I watched Penning, and I am shocked at how he has absolutely no bend at all. He is standing straight up on his pass block. There's no bend. Well, that's football 101. Low man wins. Get your arms. I didn't play offensive line, but you get your hands under the pads of the guy that you're blocking, and you can stand him up. Instead, he's getting stood up, and then he's going backwards because he is dropping in pass protection. So all the guys do is just shoving him.
Yeah.
It's not even a move. You know, it's not like the hump move that Reggie White had or
Hmm.
anything like that. He just puts his hands in his chest because he's not bending. So a 6'7" guy is going to give a huge target, and he just pushes him. And I just couldn't believe it because Charles Brown, the famous "I've seen enough" player, Sean Payton was. His thing was slow reaction,
Hmm.
bad technique, um, just clueless on whatever he was facing against. You know, if the guy's going to go in, looks like he's going to go inside and then comes outside, Brown just goes completely inside and lets the guy lay on in. You know, and that was the I've seen enough moments. Penning, it's like he's never played football before in his
Yeah.
life out there. And that's what's so puzzling because nobody who, especially if you got to a Senior Bowl and you become a first-round draft pick, no one should look this bad. And I don't know what it is. I used to think it was like Marty Schottenheimer talked about this. He was playing against his friend now, Joe Namath, and
Hmm.
he said he got a chance to get out there and play. He had a hard time getting on the field because the Buffalo Bills had good linebackers. He had a hard time getting on the field. So he got his opportunity. He made a mistake and gave up a big play to Joe Namath. And he got so mad at himself, he wanted to make up for it the next play. And then he made another mistake, and it caused another big play. Then he made a third mistake, and he kept going. That's why he started developing that saying, one play at a time. The game is one play at a time. I thought, based on the way Chase Young worked him over before that game Saturday night, Penning was guilty of that same thing, one play at a time, not doing one play at a time, making the mistake. So he was going to try and make up for it in this next play, and then he makes another mistake, just like Schottenheimer was talking about. But that wasn't the case at all. It was more a case of just, I don't know what I'm doing out here, you know, and I don't know how to play the position they want me to do. So I'm just getting ragdolled because I'm passive. And he's got the physical tools. This is what's so frustrating. He has good feet. He has the strength. He has the power, but his technique is just garbage, and it's going to cost him his career. So what do you do? And we've already said there's no one out there on this roster that you can say, okay, I can plug this guy in and I'll survive with him. You're not going to survive with these guys.
No.
You know, so what can they do? I know you had a report on the veteran free agents, and people are like, 50% of Donovan Smith is better than nothing, you know? So
They apparently forgot what kind of what kind of player Donovan Smith was all those years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when Cam Jordan was averaging 2 sacks a game, against Smith. And it just, I was laughing when you brought up the article because, and we see it every single year, not just preseason, but during the regular season. There's a large portion of Saints fans, more so than any other fan base I've seen, that think that it's just so easy to trade a player that they think is garbage or underachieving or lazy or disruptive. Like another team is going to want this.
right.
Yeah, just trade them. Who's going to take? Are you? And I've commented back to a couple people. If you were the GM of a team, would you trade him? Trade for him? Well, hell no. There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
It
The
works on
answer,
Madden, though.
right? That's my response to the people that say, "Well, just move him to guard." Perhaps this was a move that should have been done. Should have, past tense. If you were going to do it, you should have done it as soon as last year's season ended. You should have had your people recognize, or even when you hired Clint Kubiak, Clint say, hey, this guy's not a tackle, not in my system. He could play guard, maybe. We'll try him out there. It's too late to make that move now, and expect to get anything out of Trevor. And the other guys, we mentioned the guys on the roster. Udo, I still like Udo as a player. I'm hoping that Saturday was just a bad outing, but the reality is that Udo has been a 1-year starter over a 5-year career, 4 or 5 year career. So again, at best, you're going to get a guy that you can survive with for a handful of games if you have to play him. But the shit, I lost my. The other guys available. Yeah, Donovan Smith is the guy everybody wants, and I can understand why. I mean, Smith is a relative. I know, but I mean, Smith is one name, but Cameron Fleming, just like Udo, he's been a 1-year starter, otherwise a journeyman. DJ Humphries, starter for a couple of years, but go on and watch. They played for the Arizona Cardinals. Go watch the Arizona Cardinals tape of the offense in the 4 years that Humphries played for them. They had one of the worst offensive lines in the league. And now everybody's saying, well, what about Dwayne Brown, Bakhtiari? They're left tackles, folks. You're going to bring them in. You're going to bring them in, and on all those guys, all these guys are past their prime, injury prone, dealing with injuries, currently, and you want to bring them in and then plug them in at right tackle. Not going to work. No, okay, you bring them in, you plug them in at left tackle, and then you move your rookie Fuaga over to the right side. And I saw a comment that you made in response to someone earlier. Fuaga, at least early indications, look like a Willie Roaf type of player where he's going to be equally effective on the left side or right side, like Ramczyk was early in his career. But do you really want to do that to a rookie who played right tackle throughout college? You drafted him. You said, okay, Talese, we're going to play you at left tackle. He's just getting acclimated to that. And 3 months into his NFL career, you say, okay, Talese, we're going to move you back to right tackle because we just signed Bakhtiari. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's why I said you create 2 holes.
Yes.
Because, he's going back to college, but now he's thinking more. And right now he's almost at the point where he's not thinking anymore. He's just doing. And this isn't a rookie. I mean, this isn't a veteran that you're doing this to. You're doing this to a rookie. Willie Roaf played on the right side before they moved into the left. Ramczyk.
Kyle Turley excelled on both sides.
Yes, Kyle Turley. Jim Dombrowski played right, left, and guard.
Yeah.
Stan Brock, right and left. They flipped him, but they did it. He would start 1 year on the right side, and then the next year he would go to the left. They didn't do it mid-season. They let him play a whole year. So they kind of set themselves up for this because they didn't go out there and sign a top guard or a top tackle. But then again, you're trying to fix your cap. Are you really going to pay $13 to $15 million a year for a guy that you really aren't going to sink long term in because he is going to be soon on the backside of his career?
Yeah.
I understand why they didn't, but they are in a hell of a fix. And Hemisphere, you're right. It's gonna, if they can't figure the offensive line out, the offense can't score. You're going to be back to max protect again. You're going to be back there with one tight end on the right side the whole time, trying to help out the left tackle and the right tackle. And then you're going to you still have an issue with the guards. I don't know who that guard is going to be yet. You mentioned, I'm sorry, I forgot who you mentioned earlier that you thought played well.
Lucas Patrick, I thought looked serviceable. I'll put it that way.
but it's not a long-term answer. I think they really were counting on Solidarity to kind of step up and be a good guard that would get better. He struggled, then got injured, so it's setting him back. So it's once again, it's making it like, you made a mistake, 2 mistakes on a position you knew you needed to fix.
Yeah.
But they were really hoping for a bargain free agent, much like Chase Young, much like Gay, and it never happened.
I know, and you can't say that the effort, at least on paper, wasn't there. They brought in Patrick, Shane Lemieux, Udo. They drafted Fuaga. They drafted Josiah Ezram, who's a right tackle by trade, but a very raw project. So they brought in a lot of guys that Kubiak, at least in theory, believed could fit his system. But you're right. So far, they haven't hit on any of them. And maybe Lucas Patrick was okay in Chicago. He looked okay Saturday night. But with as bad as the rest of this offensive line is, and I'm including Cesar Ruiz in this conversation because I have zero confidence when I see Cesar Ruiz on the field. You need better than okay. From one of these other linemen, and you're not. I think Eric McCoy is going to be just fine. I think Talise Fuaga. Again, this is an early indicator, but I think Talise Fuaga, they found a player. But you can't have a successful offensive line when you have 2 good to very good players, and the rest below average or worse.
And for those who are saying, well, that's why they should have re-signed Andres Pete. Andres Pete, again, injury prone, on the wrong side of 30. How much confidence you have in him to continue playing at a serviceable level where he played last year? I get why the Saints said, you know what, we're going to try somebody else. Because you got the best of Pete last year.
Yeah.
And I think he is a declining player, and you just aren't going to be able to get that. You're just not going to be able to get that kind of guy. It's just, we talked about Kool-Aid McKinstry having a good game earlier. To me, I understand fans are saying, this is why you should have drafted a guard in the 2nd round, or this is why you should have drafted another tackle in the 2nd round, because you needed your offensive line fixed. I get he is a 1st-round pick, and you're probably not really reaching, but you're probably overdrafting by a few slots if you would have gone after a tackle or a guard in the 2nd round. But you also didn't have a pick in the 3rd round, didn't have a pick in the 4th round. You needed offensive linemen. And, I saw some mock drafts. It was all 7 rounds, offensive linemen. So it's just like tackle, guard, tackle. That's our draft class, all offensive linemen. Somebody's got to be good out of that mix.
Right. Well, consider this too, Alan, and I think you even brought it up during the draft show with Brendan and I. It's one thing, and I completely understand also why Saints fans are saying, oh, they should have drafted a tackle or a guard in the 2nd round too, or traded up in the 3rd or 4th to get one. And maybe they tried, we don't know. Look at the draft results over the last couple of years. Nick Saldiveri, Cesar Ruiz, the draft results on both sides of the line. Peyton Turner, Marcus Davenport, Isaiah Foskey. So it's time to really start questioning the scouting department, at least your college scouting department. And you said that during the draft show, shortly before or after the draft as well. Now Eric McCoy, he's a player. Ryan Ramczyk, a Saints Hall of Famer. Yeah, and they look like they have a player in
Paulson
Talise
Adebo,
Kawaga.
you've got a good
Yeah.
player, Alante Taylor. You've got, we've done it. It's unbelievable. You look at the Saints' history, and the secondary has been trash. I'm telling you, from 1967 to 2017, you look at the draft picks, and you can count on one hand and still have a couple of fingers left over. Really good players that they drafted at corner, and really good players they drafted as safeties.
Yeah.
After 2017, and for you guys who don't like hearing this, once Dennis Allen took over the defense on this team, you start getting a lot of good players you never even heard of, who turned out to be good defensive players or good special teams guys, like in a JT Gray. But I'm thinking, aside from the Malcolm Jenkins, and because he was drafted when Dennis Allen was secondary coach, he was secondary coach of this team right here. But Marcus Williams, Howden looks like he could be that kind of player. Paulson Adebo, Marshawn Lattimore,
Von Bell, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, Bell, John, exactly. You just go through there, and it's like we used to be able to draft offensive linemen really well.
Yeah.
Now we can't draft them worth a damn. We couldn't draft secondary players. Now we can. Seems like every guy we draft is good. Kool-Aid McKinstry looks like the next one who's going to be a great player. And it's frustrating because it's like I need both. I need good players on both sides of the ball. I'm amazed, but it's also I'm questioning the scouting. I'm questioning Jeff Ireland, because it's like, Jeff, you got the greatest draft class this team has ever had in 2017, and you've been living off of that thing. But you start looking at the draft classes from 2018 to 2024, and you see a lot of misses, a lot of holes. And this goes over two coaching staffs. It's not just, Dennis Allen, he's the one that's screwing it up. Or it's Sean Payton, he was the one doing it all. No, it's both coaching staffs. And it's the same kind of positions too. Offensive tackle, offensive guards. You're just not getting those quality players. Tight ends. We can't draft a tight end worth a damn.
No. The defensive end too.
Yeah. Defensive end. I got into not an argument, but a discussion on Twitter about it. And I said, we have become a team or an organization that is RAS driven, relative athletic score driven. And it is a useful metric, but it's become almost the dominant metric.
Yeah.
Like, I want to draft guys who score really high RAS. And that's how you get the Marcus Davenports and the Peyton Turners and those guys. Cesar Ruiz fits that, because they're athletic freaks. Peyton Turner has an enormous wingspan. He's a giant. Cam Jordan talked about that. He's walking around the defensive line when Marcus Davenport was there, and he's going, I'm the short guy here. These guys are towering over me, and their arms are so long. It's like a knockdown passes, but they get hurt a lot. It's almost like this finely tuned machine is so souped up. It's the high performance car that breaks down every time you pull it out the garage.
Right.
It looks awesome. You rev that motor up, and it looks badass, and it rolls out, and you got every time you start it, it won't start. It's electrical problem. The starter's bad. I threw a piston rod. Something happens to this thing. It never runs.
And I don't know about you. I continue to like the old school method. I would rather turn on the film and draft a player that I have seen make plays in games and stay healthy enough to be on the field throughout most of his team's season.
Yeah.
I thought that was a successful football player.
Well, it's a lot of guys from small schools too. We did the Ohio State thing. We got a lot of good players out of Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
But then we started doing the small schools, and Zach Street, Northwestern, Jerome Bushrod, Townsend, Jari Evans, Bloomsfield or
Bloomsburg.
I get that. You got something, Marcus Colson Hofstra. You're getting some great talent that way, but there's only so many of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Walter Payton came from Jackson State, but I'm not drafting running backs from Jackson State because I think I'm going to get another Walter Payton.
Right.
Jerry Rice came from Mississippi Valley State. I'm not going to that school for receivers. That's a once in a lifetime deal. And you got lucky with those guys. And that is a huge part of the draft. It is luck. But eventually you have to start looking at the Alabamas, the LSUs, and Clemson was really good. Clemson, Ohio State, like you were getting players from Ohio State, and you were doing very well getting those guys. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, you look at all those Ohio State players we brought in, you'd be hard pressed to find a guy you're going, that guy was shit. I mean, Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Malcolm Jenkins, all came from Ohio State.
Yeah, Von Bell, Marshawn Lattimore.
Marshawn Lattimore. Yeah, all great players. And it's what that school does best. You weren't reaching, I'm really aging myself here, but you're not going to Michigan to go get a quarterback.
Right.
A passing quarterback. I know Tom Brady came from Michigan. I know that. But, I mean, that was a reputation that Michigan was a 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You didn't go draft quarterbacks from Michigan. You drafted running backs from Michigan. You drafted offensive line from Nebraska. You were those big Cornhusker Nebraska guys. You weren't going out there to go. Your quarterback wasn't from Nebraska.
Right.
Your wide receivers weren't coming from Nebraska. They were coming from University of Miami. That's where your wide receivers are coming from. And that's missing. And I don't know why, other than these scouts want to find these diamonds in the rough, these gems, guys that people aren't really looking at. And let's back up. Marcus Davenport was rated as one of the top defensive linemen in that draft. Peyton Turner was a third rounder. That was a reach. I still shake my head at that one. But Cesar Ruiz was rated as a top offensive lineman prospect. He was a center, but they were going to make a guard out of him. So it wasn't like you're going out there getting bad players. It's just you're not getting guys that really seem to fit what you want to do. It's not like you're not getting guys that really were elite players in college football for 4 years. And I think that's where you start questioning, what's the information that these scouts are providing to help put this board together? What's the information that Jeff Riley is providing these guys to make the coach say, you know what, go get him, because other teams are going to go grab him if we don't get him now. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's something that needs to be addressed. I really do, because I more so than the coaching, more so than the salary cap issues. If you're not doing well in the draft, you can't win. And that's what's happened to this team more than Sean Payton leaving and everything else, is they're just not drafting as well as they should.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, that's why we're sitting here talking about the talent deficiencies on the offensive line. And it's not like, again, on paper, the efforts were made. McCoy's a second round pick. Fuaga, Pete, Ruiz, Ramchek, all first-round picks. Penning, obviously a first-round pick. Defensive line, Davenport, Turner, first-round picks. Foskey, a second-round pick. So on paper, they're making the effort. But the reason why we're sitting here talking about the talent deficiencies in certain areas is because they've misfired on these picks. They've misfired on these free agent signings, some of them. That's why you're in the position that you are in. 3 consecutive years missing the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. People want to blame Dennis Allen. People want to blame Derek Carr. And yeah, they certainly deserve, their fair share of the blame. But, folks, sometimes and in some positions, the talent just isn't there.
They're not. Carr and Allen are not good enough to cover up the shortcomings on talent. Those Saints teams from 2014 to 2016 should not have won 7 games. They should have been 3 and 4 game winners.
Yeah.
But Drew Brees and Sean Payton did enough that not only did they win 7 games, they had a good chance of winning more. Really overachieving. Because you look at the defensive roster, the 2015 Saints. Just pull up the Giants Saints game. It was 52-49 with 6 Breeze threw 7 touchdowns and the Eli Manning threw 6. You pull those games up and you look at that starting defensive line and defensive team. That team those guys had no business being out there. Johnny Patrick, Corey White, that's the secondary. It was just horrible. They were garbage. All of them. No pressure on the defensive line. It was just terrible. You had a couple pieces, but that wasn't enough. I mean, those linebackers, I remember everybody was talking about Ellaby. He was the guy that was never healthy, but when he was out there, he looked okay. But when he wasn't out there, this linebacker core was terrible.
Right, and you only had him for 4 weeks a season, so what the hell is the difference?
Right. 16 games, you might get 4 out of them. It's just... So those teams had no business winning games. But because Breeze threw 7 touchdowns, you beat the Giants. I mean, that's the kind of superhuman effort it took to win these games. Breeze had to be Superman week in and week out to make up for those defensive shortcomings. And Brandon Browner, bad signing, led the league in penalties. So, I mean, that was the difference. And I think that's more than anything else is what's been hurting the team since the 2017 draft, because you're going back to those kind of shortcomings, except now it's on offense, not defense. So we did bad and ugly. I've got the Cardinals game going on back here right now. Let's go ahead and talk about the quarterbacks. I know everybody's going to bring up, and I knew as soon as he led that game-winning drive, that was just the icing on the cake. Everybody's going to talk about Spencer Rattler and want to make him the QB1 and everything else. But what was your opinion of Jake Haener? I really liked Jake because I liked the more he played, the better he seemed to get, the more comfortable he got, more decisive he got on his throws, much better throws in the second quarter than in the first quarter. They just showed the big play with the two A.T. Perry that ended up going for a field goal right before halftime. How did you feel about Jake Haener?
I really liked the game that Haener played. Now let's not kid anybody. Jake Haener doesn't have nearly the arm talent that Spencer Rattler does. They're 2 different types of quarterbacks in a lot of ways. But Haener looked a lot more comfortable than at any point during the preseason last year. He looked poised. He can move well enough to make the kind of rollouts and half bootlegs, that Clint Kubiak wants to run. I'll tell you, the singular play that brought a smile to my face all 3 times I watched it was during the second quarter. It was a play action, bootleg rollout to the right, RPO option pass to Dallin Holker from Jake Haener. Perfectly executed play, well blocked up front, shocking enough. Haener surveyed the field very decisively. He, in true Drew Brees form, he looked deep first and worked his way in, knowing that he had Holker on moving with him the whole time. Holker got a clean release off of the line of scrimmage and was moving with his quarterback like a seasoned professional tight end. That right there, go back and look at that play, folks. That's the Clint Kubiak offense. And in a nutshell, that's the kind of performance that I thought Jake Haener had. I think it was a 4th down pass to Kevin Austin in traffic. Again, Jake Haener is not going to be confused with John Elway or a Josh Allen or even a Spencer Rattler arm strength wise, but he could zip it in there when he has to, and he had to on that play. He zipped it between defenders in an area where Austin could make the play, and he had several throws like that on the night. He was throwing on time, and getting rid of the ball without hesitation. I love Jake Haener's game. I thought he outplayed Spencer Rattler. When you also consider the fact that Haener was playing against seconds, even some first teamers, and most of the guys Rattler was playing against, folks, they're not going to be on an NFL roster at this time next month.
Yeah, Haener played also with 32 stitches in his face because he had that surgery.
That too.
He made a comment, so much for my weak arm, and that he said he wasn't even supposed to play. And he says, well, when you're in a dogfight, you can't take any time off, so he is very much aware of what he's competing against. And he knows he's the kind of guy that, teams are always like, I want to upgrade from him. I want to do better than him. And he's aware of that. When he was playing, was it Fresno State he played for in college?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
When he was at Fresno State, they talked about how Fresno struggled when he wasn't there. But when he came back out there to play, he showed something. He was kind of that catalyst. He provided that leadership, that spark, that juice, as they like to say, that energy that players responded with. And, I hate saying this because it's not a fair comparison, but that Drew Brees, we're going down this field, we're going to score. I'm going to drive this team to a score to win this game. You can say Dan Marino, you can say any, those kind of quarterbacks, I'm going in to score, who's with me kind of guy.
This is my offense. This is my team. This is our drive.
Yes. And that's an important trait. And that's not to say Spencer Rattler doesn't have that same trait.
Right.
I'm just saying from the standpoint of Jake Haener being the undersized, weaker arm quarterback, that's what it takes for him to get himself up and to elevate his teammates, because that's the kind of player he is. And I like that. I really do. It doesn't mean I think he's going to be a starter one day. It doesn't mean I think he's, the next Drew Brees or whatever. I just am saying that as a player, I really like that kind of fight he has. And I look forward to seeing him. And he worked with Gruden this offseason. You can see that. This is the thing, and now we can talk about Spencer Rattler. This is the thing I'm trying to tell people online when it comes to Spencer Rattler. Yeah, he's got a live arm. Yeah, I see a lot of moxie out of this kid. I see potential. But as Jim Moore used to say, potential means you didn't do it yet. He's a 5th-round pick. The Saints have next to nothing invested in him. So just like Hayner went and sought out John Gruden to help him look better so he can take that next step and fight for that backup job, Rattler needs to do something similar, because come September, he is never touching a football again, except maybe to run the scout team and hold it on the sideline. He gets no reps because I'm assuming that Hayner wins the backup job, but he'll get no reps. Hayner will get maybe a quarter of the reps, if that much, maybe an eighth of a rep, because you don't have the time. It's the game plans, the regular season. Carr needs every snap he can get. So, and he's certainly not getting any reps with Shaheed, A.T. Perry, if Cedric Wilson makes the team, Cedric Wilson, and Olave. He's not getting reps with those guys. He's getting reps with the practice squad guys, if he's even throwing a football. So he's got to do the mental reps. He's got to sit there and study film. He's got to learn the offense. He's got to do all those things. This is not a first-round pick. They're not going to put him in there where they're going to say, okay, you know what? It's time. I've seen enough with Carr, and we're making the swap, and we're putting Rattler in because we think Rattler's going to be the future. And at worst, he sucks. And then we go and draft a quarterback because we've lost enough games. We're going to end up with a top 5, top 3 pick, and we can go get a real quarterback. And Allen gets fired, Carr gets cut, Loomis gets fired. It's a win-win. You know, I mean, the whole thing. It's not happening. That's not going to happen because no one's going to fall on the sword. No one's going to say, you know what? Yeah, I just screwed up, so I'm just going to play out the string, and I know I'm getting fired. Come on in. No, he's going to do everything he can to save his job.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's just not happening. That's fantasy talk. So he's got to see what he does come next year. He's got to fight for his roster spot next year. He's going to be safe this year, but he's going to have to fight for a roster spot next year because there'll be another Spencer Rattler who probably comes in the draft right behind him and challenging him, especially if they feel like, Hayner was okay as a backup, but we could do better. So they bring another quarterback to challenge the three of them, or have the three of them fight it out. I mean, that's not unrealistic. Especially, let's just say the bottom falls out and they're picking up in the top 10. Now this guy's competing for a starting job. What the hell happened to Rattler? I thought you guys were all about Rattler.
Not only that, if the bottom falls out, the Saints fans are going to get their wish. They're going to get their new coach, and you know, it's not going to be Kubiak because you're not going to keep the offensive coordinator from a bottom-ranked team. Let's be real, folks. Right. But I mean, whoever the next coach is, if you have a top 10 pick, what are you going to do? You're going to draft your quarterback. It's pure and simple as that. And look, I like Spencer Rattler too. I like his swagger, love his arm talent. But I watched him a lot in college at Oklahoma and South Carolina. He can't read a defense, and he has yet to prove to me he can. Nor would I expect a rookie 5th round pick to read a defense right now.
Exactly.
Now, I do think that, and I saw you say this, either shortly after the game on Saturday. I do believe that certainly Hayner played well enough, but I believe that Rattler played well enough too, that the Saints now realize, and they probably felt this way going into the game, but now they know 100% for sure we're not going to be able to stash either of these guys on the practice squad. Yeah. We have to keep both young guys as backups behind Carr. I do believe that the number 2 battle for the number 2 job, it's a legitimate battle, but I agree with you that I think Hayner is going to win it in the end, because if nothing else, if the 2 quarterbacks play relatively even, they're going to give it to the experienced guy, at least the guy that at least was on an NFL roster last year. I know what people are saying about, Rattler is coming for Carr's job, or Hainer is coming for Carr's job. No, so many reasons why, why that isn't going to be true. And I know, folks. Tom Brady, 6th, 7th round pick. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. Dak Prescott, 4th round pick. Kirk Cousins, I think, was a 7th round pick. Guys, and we've said, Alan and I said this before. For every, how many guys was that? Purdy, Brady, Cousins, Dak. Did I miss anybody?
I don't. Dak, Cousins, Brady, Hainer, not Hainer, Mr. Purdy.
Okay.
You said Purdy.
Okay, so 5 guys.
Yeah.
We just named 5 guys compared to literally hundreds and hundreds of quarterbacks that have been drafted in the 3rd round or later that did absolutely nothing. And here's the other difference. Cousins, Purdy, Dak, Brady, none of them, and I mean none of them, got their opportunity as a rookie. Would have gotten their opportunity as a rookie if it weren't for injuries. It's not like Bill Belichick. I think it was Belichick. The Bill Belichick said, "You know what? Drew Bledsoe is not playing well enough. I'm going to take this 7th round pick and put him in there." Brock Purdy only got his chance because Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance got hurt. Robert Griffin got hurt. Got hurt in Washington. That's why Cousins got his shot. Not Danny White. Tony Romo got hurt in Dallas. Otherwise, Dak Prescott wouldn't have seen the field. Hainer, Rattler, as you pointed out many times, they aren't going to touch the football in a real game unless Derek Carr gets hurt. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing with those guys too. Most of those guys we were just talking about replaced a former number 1 or draft pick or somebody who was the face of the franchise for a while. Drew Bledsoe was the face of the franchise for Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
So Romo was an undrafted free agent. He was waiting his turn. He was somebody who sat for a few years before he came in.
I forgot about Romo replacing Bledsoe. Man, poor Drew. He had it happen to him twice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because if you don't get that hit, I think it was the Jets, in fact, that hit Drew Bledsoe. But I mean, Bledsoe took him to the Super Bowl, just a few years earlier. So it wasn't like they were sitting there thinking the whole time, yeah, this kid we drafted from Michigan, we can't wait to put him in there because, Bledsoe, he's garbage. No, I mean, Bledsoe was the face of that franchise, and Brady just outplayed him and took over the job so much so that Bledsoe never got his job back.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to Buffalo, where he had a good seasons in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we were just spending our time talking about all the high draft picks the Saints have screwed up on the offensive line. How many 1st and 2nd round quarterbacks you want to go through before you think we get our next Drew Brees or our next franchise quarterback? I mean, it's not going to be, okay, this is the year we sucked. We got a top 5 pick. We took our quarterback and boom, now we're good again. We got CJ Stroud. Chances are you're going to get a few Mark Sanchez. I just drew a blank on his name, but the quarterback over there in Carolina. Justin Fields. You're going to get a few of those first.
Tim Couch, Akili Smith, yes. Johnny Manziel. The list goes on and on and on and on and on.
Because if there's any position in the NFL that is the worst scouted position, it's quarterback. Remember, Watson and Mahomes were drafted behind Trubisky. Trubisky was number 2 overall pick. Chicago traded up for him.
Yeah.
To get him. They traded 1 spot to get him in front of the 49ers. And the 49ers were bragging, Oh yeah, we got Solomon Thomas, who I actually liked in the draft, but
So did I.
that shows how much I know.
Right.
But yeah, they were bragging. They got Solomon Thomas. Both of them turned out to be busts. So I mean, it's probably the position that has the most busts in the NFL draft. And you're talking about a franchise that hasn't drafted one in the first round since 1971. They've only done it one time. And they're going to get it right the first time out of the box. I mean, it's just...
I'm not going to place heavy money on that happening.
Yeah. I mean, so what happens then? Okay, so then we fire the GM, we fire the head coach, we fire the head of scouting department. We do all those things. And yeah, I agree with you. He didn't look phased, but he was also, like we said, facing the third and fourth teamers. It's a positive. And like Bob said, it's a legitimate battle to be number two. Rattler is showing the talent that he has to compete for that job. But talent's not enough. You have to know it's the mental part. And that's why you have so many busts in the NFL draft, because the mental part just simply isn't there for a lot of guys. They won because they were the most talented guy on the field every Saturday in college. And guys, I remember Peyton Manning talking about this, that no one is open in the NFL. And that is very true, because the defensive backs have the speed that they're not used to. Guys are wide open in college football, whereas in the pros, you got to throw people open. It's anticipating throws. It's you're putting the ball in a spot, because everyone runs a version of the West Coast offense where everything is timing, and your window is going to open for this receiver to catch this ball if you take exactly 5 steps back, not 4 and a hitch, and then try and let it go early. Or you hit that 5th step and boom, the ball's gone. Mm-hmm. If you hit that 5th step, pat the ball and release it, that window closes. So that's the thing. That's what college players have to get used to, because they're looking for the open guy, and it's just not there yet. It's not there. It's not going to be there either, because good defensive backs are going to bait you into thinking that window is open, and it's not. Because they know where the ball is going to go. They're looking at film all day. In college, you look at some film, but the rest of the time you're in class, you're drinking, you got girls you're meeting, everything else. You're not. This is not your job. So I mean, it's just it's different. It just is. So that's the hard part. So I like Rattler. I like what I see out of Rattler, but he is not ready for prime time yet. You got to let him simmer. You got to let him develop. And if he doesn't, you could be looking at another quarterback next year. We don't know. I mean, we need offensive linemen, but we could be looking at a quarterback next year. I mean, Carr is not going to be here past 2026. I can tell you that. Even if he throws for 5,000 yards this year, which I don't think is going to happen, but even if he throws for 5,000 yards, he's been on the wrong side of 30. He'd be looking at a new contract. The Saints just not going to commit that kind of money to him. He's the transitional guy. He's not the one. I just quoted When Harry Met Sally. I can't believe this. On a football show.
I agree with all that, with the exception of if he has a Drew Brees type of season and wins a Super Bowl.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that's a stretch. Yeah, that's a stretch.
Absolutely.
But listen, I mean, against 49ers this weekend, a far different team than we're talking about with Arizona. And I know we only have a few minutes. Well, I'll put it this way. I only have a few minutes left in me. with the 49ers have such an outstanding defense, even well into their second and third teams. So, the offensive line still scares the hell. And now I'm worried that Carr, Haener, or Rattler are going to get killed on this weekend. But I'll be very interested to see, how Carr handles the new system that he's still learning. They all are. But B, how well are Haener and Rattler going to play against the 49ers? Are they going to be able to carry over that momentum that they did last week against Arizona?
How long will you play Carr this weekend?
If it's me, I want to give him at least 3 series, if not 4.
Mm-hmm.
I only because, and the start. I don't care so much about Olave, Shaheed, Kamara. I want my first team offensive line, or who I think is going to be my first team offensive line, and my quarterback to get as many series as possible, and even well into the second quarter, 3-4 series minimum. Now, if you're not able to protect Carr, then you sit him.
Yeah.
But I need, if I'm Dennis Allen, and especially if I'm Clint Kubiak, again, this is a new offensive system. I can work with my receivers and my running backs off to the side, but I need my quarterback to get a feel for, if I'm Clint, if I need my quarterback to get a feel for what I want to do in the game, and I need to get a feel for what he's comfortable with in a game. So, in the 49ers, you're playing one of, if not the best team in the NFC. I want to get at least well into the second quarter with him. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's what I would do.
To me, it depends on how much protection the man gets. If he's getting hit because the offensive line can't block worth a damn, I'm taking him out.
Yeah.
But, again, talking about getting off on a fast start and all these things, they need the reps. He needs to be out there running the offense. They need a series. They need a score, just get something going.
Especially because they had to cancel those If they had the scrimmages, I wouldn't be as worried about it.
Exactly.
Since they canceled them, now I feel differently.
Well, yeah, and they canceled them because the 49ers beat the hell.
Right.
They got 23 guys, I think they said, that were injured. So, I mean, yeah, how long are their starters going to play? Who's going to be out there playing? I doubt Christian McCaffrey's even going to see the field, for example. So, yeah, you've got, you're missing those scrimmages. You're missing those situations where you can get – because these things are practice games. They're not real games. They want to see specific things and controlled situations. That's why these scrimmages are more valuable than the preseason game as far as evaluation. But I think that, given especially last week, they need to have the starting offensive team out there for at least a quarter to get used to the tempo, get used to everything, and get out there and execute against another team, especially a team as good as the 49ers. Then I'm flipping it. I'm putting Rattler in next, and then Haener to close out the game.
Yes, absolutely. If it's a legitimate competition, then you got to give each quarterback legitimate opportunities against the other team's twos.
Yeah, and then for the last preseason game, I'm probably not playing Carr at all, but I'm going to play my starting offensive line again with probably Haener, and then Rattler to finish the game, like Haener first half, Rattler second half.
Or at least whoever you're leaning to as the number 2.
Yeah, exactly. Last thing before I ask you about the Bayou Blitz, because we didn't talk about it all. Justin Simmons came in last week after we did our show. He came in on Wednesday. They took him out to eat. He seemed to bond really well with the defensive coaches, and he bonded really well with Tyrann Mathieu. But I think he's looking for a multi-year deal. And then this week he went to Atlanta. Probably to try and because the Saints have a contract offer on the table, my understanding, but it's a 1-year deal, not as much money as he wants for a 30-year-old safety. So I think Atlanta became a negotiating tactic to try and push this. Do you think the Saints will sign Justin Simmons? That's a lot of stuff just to ask you a simple question like that.
Right. I still think it's a strong possibility. Because if I'm not mistaken, Simmons also met with the Philadelphia Eagles before he met with the Falcons. And like you said, there's no doubt that Simmons is, in fact, he's made it clear he's looking for a multi-year deal. Mm-hmm. It's just as clear that the Saints don't want to offer that kind of deal to free agents right now. Because, I mean, you look at Chase Young, Willie Gay, they're both signed to one-year deals.
Yeah.
I wish they weren't, especially Gay. But that's just what the Saints are looking for right now.
Exactly.
They're looking for they're a team in transition. I'm not discounting the possibility that the Saints go back to Simmons with a 2 or probably a 3-year deal. If they can backload that deal, financially. But it all depends on what the Falcons are offering, and we know the Falcons are insane. My favorite to sign Justin Simmons right now is probably the Atlanta Falcons, because they're all into the splashy moves, a directionless, rudderless franchise. But I still think the Saints have a shot to sign him. I don't think that it's going to happen before this weekend's set of games. I think Simmons will make another free agent visit or two before he makes his own decision. But as of right now, I still think New Orleans is in the running, but they're not the favorites.
Well, Atlanta just lost their third-round pass rushing guy. So they really need a pass rusher more than they need a safety right now.
Right.
They lost the safety too. They have no defense now. They have next to nothing out there in that defense. So be interesting to see if he does make that move or not. So that was a big thing I wanted to get your opinion on. I watched the press conference today with Dennis Allen, and Dennis Allen didn't know what a metaphor was, even though he made metaphor references. But I guess I couldn't hear the whole question, but somebody asked him something, and he said, "And what's a metaphor? Give me the real definition of a metaphor." And I just had to laugh because, he just knows football, man. He doesn't know anything about that English language stuff. It's just, I know football. So, what do you got going on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow?
More good, bad, and ugly from the Arizona game. I'd be interested to hear Brendan's take. We're going to preview the 49ers game. And by preview, and you know this, by preview, what we expect to see, players we're hoping, units that we're hoping will bounce back, and usually by Wednesday or Thursday, you get a better feel for what teams are going to do with their starters in preseason. That's when we found out last week when Kyler Murray wasn't going to play. So maybe by showtime tomorrow, we'll know about Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, all those guys. But again, the 49ers are head to toe, top to bottom, so much better than the Arizona Cardinals, that I think that this will be a better measuring stick for the Saints than what the Cardinals were on all three sides of the ball.
Yeah. And I think for the people who are saying that, I didn't see much difference between Pete Carmichael's offense and Kubiak's offense. Well, that you're not playing to win the game.
No.
You're not coming up with trick plays and everything else to try and win the game. You're evaluating individual players and situations, so it's going to be pretty basic. Because that's what you're looking at. So the play you said earlier, the bootleg with Haener, where he hit the tight end. That is Clint Kubiak's offense. You're going to see a lot of that kind of stuff, and I think that's what you're going to see come the first game of the season. But right now, don't evaluate Clint Kubiak on what they're doing out there. There's so many people that got shifting in and out of that offense. They got so many things going on. The only thing I didn't like is I don't like him up in the booth.
No.
I'd rather him on the field. I'm curious to see if he's going to come back and stand on the sideline just once and call a game. Because I think you get a better feel without going through your guy in the booth, then down to the field, then to the quarterback. I just don't like that. So anyway, all right, guys, thank you for sticking with us all this time. You know, Bob's fading fast, but it's regular. It's getting close to the regular season. The Saints, I think, break camp this weekend. I think they head back to New Orleans after this week.
I think after the 49ers game, they do head back. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know they go to Tulane Wednesday, the 23rd or the 20th or 21st, I think, or 20th. They go back. They have a practice in Tulane, and they got a practice in the Dome. So before the last preseason game. So I thought they got a lot accomplished out there in California. Yeah. The weather was great the whole time. They worked outside the whole time. I thought they got a lot accomplished. I think it was a good move for them to go out there. I kind of would like for them to do that again.
Yeah.
Not because I want to screw the fans over, just because I want them to get the work in, you know. And the weather looked great every time I look at something. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.